Good morning and welcome to the second day of the 4th Free and Open Source Software Conference 2019. Today, we will continue with many more interesting talks and discussions. We will start this day with a talk that will be delivered by our keynote speaker, Ms. Dorothy Gordon, Information for All Program Chair at UNESCO. She will talk about innovation, FOSS and the platform economy, diversity versus dominance.
No, just leave it. Yeah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Good morning, everyone. And first, allow me to thank our hosts here at SQU and ITA and the entire organizing team here in Oman for their warm hospitality and the excellent organization of this meeting. And the hospitality and friendliness of the Omani people is very well known. And as soon as I arrived at the airport, I felt it. So thank you all. Today I'm going to speak to you in my capacity as the chair of IFAP, but also in my capacity as the former Director General of the Ghana-India Kofi Annan Center of Excellence in ICT, where I was working for the government of Ghana for about 13 years. And I was able to observe certain issues that are very key to the development of our countries. So the first thing I want to do is to tell you about the Information for All program. And I think you can read the slide. The most important thing that you need to retain is that Oman is actually on the council of IFAP. And so Oman has a role in shaping how the IFAP program should work. And what we all know is that we have seen so much rapid change in digital technology and its impact on all aspects of our lives that very often we are struggling to catch up, whether it is legally, whether it is socially, whether it is in terms of the development of our economies, we are struggling to catch up. And IFAP is there to make sure that we have the right framework that gives people access to this new digital economy in such a way that they make the best of the opportunities. These are the working groups: information for development, information literacy, information preservation. Let me stop with information literacy, because yesterday I was discussing with somebody and they told me that you don't have enough material in Omani language that will help people understand the full extent of this digital revolution. This is an opportunity for you to take the open, not open source, but openly licensed content from UNESCO. It is licensed under the Creative Commons license CC BY, which allows you to download and you can translate, adapt, and reuse. So we also have information preservation, information ethics, information accessibility, and multilingualism. And this year is the year of indigenous language. So it is totally appropriate that we start putting content into our local languages that will be easily accessible by our populations. This quote is just reminding us of how much has changed and how important it is for the future. Yesterday, somebody asked me about UNESCO and open source. We have a software heritage project, which is preserving source code. Then we have Youth Mobile. I don't know, is there Youth Mobile in Oman? There's Youth Mobile in many countries where children at the secondary school level are being taught how to code. And for instance, the project that is in Ghana, focuses just on young women. And it gives them the confidence to be able to understand that technology is not just for consuming, but you can also create technology. And our countries are tending to be left behind because well, actually, I was looking at Bahrain. In Bahrain, I know that in some of the schools, as early as 5 years old, they are teaching how to code. So maybe in Oman as well. I'm not as familiar as I should be with your environment. But coding, teaching coding is simply teaching a kind of logic which helps the child in all dimensions of their academic work. And then we have an initiative which focuses on open software for the water sector in Africa, and then the school safety assessment also done open. Now, if you look back a few years, everybody was very, very optimistic about technology, the dawn of a new age. And now, now, after a lot of scandals last year, issues to do with security and privacy, there's another tendency to look at it as if it's an apocalypse. You know, everything is bad. But of course it is not. And we have a lot of challenges. The thing that I want to highlight is that for many countries in the so-called South, that is, those countries that are not dominant in terms of technology, many decision makers do not understand what is really happening. And we see that in many countries, we don't have a systematic strategy. And this is very dangerous. We don't even document what we are doing right now. So I asked in my country, how much do we spend on buying technology every year? Where is that money going? Do we know how much stays inside the country to create more jobs? Or how much is just going as outside? And creating a new dependency. I think some of you will remember yesterday that I look at that kind of technology dependency not only for its economic impact, but also the national security impact. We talk about critical national infrastructure, things like your electricity grid, things like how your traffic works, things like how your financial sector works. If all the technology being used in your banks is foreign and out of your control, you immediately become vulnerable, and we have seen this happen. I think some of you would have followed what happened in Estonia, what happened in Georgia, and some other countries. The whole country is brought to a halt because somebody organizes a hack attack on their system. So very often, there's no clear understanding of the vulnerabilities, and there's no clear digital strategy. At the same time, the environment has shifted. That digital environment is now dominated by major monopolies. And we have two camps. There's the US camp, the Silicon Valley guys, who are usually called the FANGs. And I'm not going to name the companies because I think all of you know those big platforms that make up FAANG. And then, coming from China now, we have BAT, which is also the major Chinese companies, and I know they are not listening. So Baidu, Alibaba, and Tencent, they make up BAT. So these companies tend to crowd out the possibility of innovation. 12 years ago, there were a number of localized social networking platforms. Is there one in Oman? you have an Omani social networking platform, or you are all relying on the foreign one? Okay. And yesterday we had speakers who talked to you about data and the fact that when you're using these platforms, they often make it available for free, but basically you are the currency for them. I hope you liked my images. It was very difficult to find Fang. So that's a cute little snake and those famous monkeys. So any of you who want to follow that, you can just take those URLs about the Frightful Five. It's well documented and discussed ad infinitum in the US. But what I really want to talk to you about today is how you build an innovation ecosystem. And I think that one of the things that we've seen is that everything to do with tech is assumed to be something that concerns people who do computer science, people who do information studies. But really, an innovation system is very complicated. I just love this because it looks very complicated, and also it has a beautiful CC license. But there's so many players that get into an information system. And the challenge for us is to get enough people up to speed so that they're able to understand what role they can play in the innovation system. And let me just give you a couple of examples. Yesterday we were talking with a gentleman from Germany who looks at the licensing for software products. I don't know if in Oman, the universities which teach law have gone extensively into how to license software products, the specific different licenses that are available, the implications for the legal regime, whether the judges have had exposure in how to handle such a case. Normally you go to the law faculty and the law students don't really want to get into technology, but technology is about the most profitable area for lawyers today. So any faculty that you go into should be training people up in what this digital, so-called digital revolution, the fourth industrial revolution, what the implications are for the future. And we're not seeing that. So even when it comes to PhD programs and the kind of thesis which is being written, it is not being written on those kind of topics. And as I said earlier, you see that there's no good grasp of what is actually happening in the economy as a result of those transformations. So yesterday I was really happy to hear about ITA's work in conducting that survey on what the challenges were for the implementation of FOSS. But what we really want to know is, with all the changes that have been introduced, what has been, where in the Omani economy are we seeing growth? Where are we seeing job losses, job gains? Where are we importing talent? And what is the profile of talent that we should be creating today if we are going to reduce the dependencies that we observe today, so that 5 years from now, we are not even more dependent on imported technology. So there are many, many lovely graphics about innovation systems. This is a simpler one. But I want to focus on these two countries. When I was at the Ghana-India Kofi Annan Center of Excellence in ICT, we focused a lot on learning from India's example in technology and using their experience to inspire what should happen in Ghana. We also visited other countries. For example, Cuba is very interesting because they used to take their top students throughout Cuba, and they sent them to a special university. The university, from the Spanish, let me just say the University of Computer Science, which meant that they were coming out with very sharp brains, with very specific high-level training, so that they will be able to take control of this sector for Cuba. There are very few countries that do that. Very famous countries at the moment, I think everybody here knows about the Brazilian open source experience. Yes? No? Maybe? Just wiggle your hands if it is yes. No. Okay. So, under Lula da Silva, the former president, who I think may be in jail now, I'm not sure. Under that former president, Brazil had a major open source push. And you can go to that site, CETIC BR. It is the agency that sort of drives things. And of course, in Brazil, they speak Portuguese. So the URL I put up there for you will allow you to access insights into their digital transformation strategy in English, because they presented this at an ITU conference. And what Brazil did is it developed open source solutions for its e-government initiative, and particularly for its education sector as well. And what was their aim? Their aim was not only to reduce the cost, but to stimulate their innovation ecosystem. And they have succeeded, though many people question how great their open source initiative worked out in the end. Brazil is attracting huge amounts of venture capital into its startup economy today. So you see that there are different dimensions. You could say it is not only the intended consequences that can be positive, but sometimes the unintended consequences as well. So all of those URLs on this side will tell you about Brazil. The experience that is very popular today in discussion is the Chilean experience. Now, I have a very good friend from Chile, and I think there are some university students here. And let me tell you that as you grow professionally, one of your greatest assets is your network. So whoever you're sitting beside, make sure you know them well. You never know when you will call on them for information. So please go to Startup Chile. Startup Chile is famous because they have a 54% success rate in their startups. They have been able to, with the agency CORFO, which is the Chilean Innovation Agency. So I am trying to encourage Ghana to develop the Ghana Innovation Agency. And I hope that one day I will see the Omani Innovation Agency, an agency that focuses on digital strategy. So it is growing the ecosystem. So they have been able to attract huge amounts, I think $1.4 billion of investment in their innovation economy. They have grown jobs, and they caught my attention first because I am a judge for the best e-content globally. And I was shocked because in every single category of our competition, we had very strong Chilean entries. And I said, what happened? This is a country at the end of the world. Who goes to Chile? It's really far south. You know, traveling to Chile is it as bad as traveling to Australia? I don't know. But it's far away. And they said they realized they were neglected. And so they had to have a very deliberate strategy. We don't have time to go into the strategy. But if you go to the CORFO website, you can get information in English. And then what I find very interesting is that CORFO, and you see the URL I have given you there, CORFO is now documenting everything that happens within those companies so that you can actually learn from their current experience how to build a successful startup. And that is really useful. I don't know if you're doing it yet within the GCC, but understanding which companies become successful and which don't is very important. And let me also say that one of the good things about this, what I found interesting is in Chile, they are not giving tax breaks, but they are giving seed capital. They are giving mentoring. They have a huge network to support these startups. It's really, really interesting. So I encourage you to get into that. But one of the things that you can do to help your innovation ecosystem is to actually get government procurement organized in such a way that your first recourse will be open, that you will actually emphasize the need to focus on local content so that you support local companies rather than always importing, that you write the contract for when you import in such a way that there's a technology transfer and a technology handover after a number of years. So we're almost at the end here. I just wanted to, because I think some of you may not know about the zebra movement, which is a very interesting movement. Unicorns, as you all know, everybody wants to be part of a unicorn, a company that has over $1 billion as its value, you know, its market value. That's a unicorn. And what we see, unicorns very often have a very exploitative business model. Usually they're exploiting our minds to make us addicted to what they do, etc. A zebra, this new movement is focusing on creating digital companies that are focused on social good. And I have given you the link. If you want to become part of the zebra movement, just click on that. And I like this photo because it is a hybrid. You see, this is a zebra-ish looking unicorn. And maybe that is what we are looking for. So let me remind you again, because I am chair of IFAP and chair of information literacy. We need to understand what's going on, because our mind is now being used as a commodity that makes companies more money. They analyze our behavior online, and then they manipulate our behavior either to make it addictive, or I think all of you have followed the Cambridge Analytica scandal, and it is like an iceberg. This is just a little bit of how extensive a problem we have when it comes to our privacy, our security, our ability to operate a democratic society. And the thing is that we have choice. We have the possibility of shaping our digital future, but that requires a conscious effort. It can no longer be that we just say, okay, innovation, we'll look at innovation overall. We have to recognize that digital is the infrastructure of infrastructures. It is influencing everything. We need to get a handle on it, and it needs to be everyone, not just the people from the communication sector. So open source gives us great hope. I think that the fact that you have communities that are putting great content out there that you can use to start building up your new companies, that it fosters that collaborative spirit, gives us a great opportunity for being able to do more. And I really hope that with these few words, I will have encouraged those of you in the audience to get more involved in the innovation economy and more involved in developing a very clear digital strategy to reduce the dependencies so that 5 years from now, your critical national infrastructure will be firmly in your hands. Thank you very much.